And there were three of those key, what they call presuppositions. That shifted the worldview of Western people in such a way to make science possible.
Okay, what were those?
Well, the first, it was something that scientists at the time called the intelligibility of nature.
Right.
And that's the idea that nature is the product of an intelligent mind and therefore is endowed with rationality. And you can see that in the orderly concourse of nature, you can see it in the design of nature, and moreover, not only is nature the product of the divine mind, but we're able to understand that. There is, in a sense, a secret that nature has to reveal about its orderly processes. And we're able to understand that secret. We're able to perceive the design and order in nature because our minds were made in the image of the creator of nature itself. So there's a principle of correspondence. The British physicist Sir John Polkinghorne put it, the reason built into nature matches the reason built into our minds. There's a connection. And so because we have an intelligence that has as its source the intelligence that built the world, we can understand the world. So that was the first big presupposition that inspired modern science, and it's really unique to the Judeo-Christian understanding of creation.
Yeah, second one was order.
Well, right, the idea that nature is orderly. Now, the Greeks believed that too. Many of the animist cultures and cultures in the East did not believe that, but the Greeks also believed in order. But there was a unique aspect of that belief in order in the Western Judeo-Christian mind, and that is that the order in nature that we now describe with the concept of the laws of nature, that order was a product of the divine mind, again, and that God was constantly upholding or sustaining those orderly processes that we observe, but also that the order could have been different. Because God was a free agent, and he could have ordered the world lots of different ways. So the Greeks had the idea that the order in nature was the order that seemed most reasonable to us. So therefore they thought they could sit and kind of do armchair philosophizing and figure it out. Yep. So for example, they thought that the orbits of the planets were in perfect circles because the circle was the perfect form of motion, and therefore the heavens, which were the quintessential realm, as they called it, must embody that perfect form of motion. Kepler came along later and said, well, we better look and see and make sure. And he found out that the orbits were actually elliptical. But that impulse to go and look and make sure was derivative of the idea that God could have ordered the universe in many different ways. When I was teaching, I used an example with my students. Got 4 different types of paintbrushes. They all have the same basic purpose, but each one is a little different for a slightly different application. So the Greeks thought if you could figure out the purpose of something, you could then deduce how it was made. If you knew the final cause, you could deduce all of Aristotle's other causes. But the scientists during the period of scientific revolution thought, no, God could have made the world differently. Newton came up with something called an inverse square law, but it might have been an inverse cubed law to describe gravitational motion. So you had to go and look and see. And as Robert Boyle put it, the great chemist during this period, he said, it's not the job of the natural philosopher, which is what they called scientists at the time, to deduce what God must have done. Instead, we must go and see what he in fact did do. So this idea of order combined with the idea of contingency, that nature was contingent on the will of God, led to, first of all, the impulse to describe nature mathematically, but also to investigate it empirically, to look at it and study it carefully to see how God actually did make the world.
Yeah, that's what contingency means. The fact is that there were many ways God was free to do it, and they believed that. And their job then was to figure out, what did he do?
Go look and find out, exactly.
Which was one of the presuppositions that gave us modern science. You have to investigate. But
you have 3 in summary: the idea of the intelligibility of nature, the idea of the order of nature, and the idea of the contingency of nature.